Next thing, I'd like to honor recognize the individuals for the Arbor Day coloring contest. Any park board members, please come forward, past and present.
Use the, well, then we're not recording, so continue on.
So from Rebecca Boone Elementary, Allison Hudson. Which posters? And from Warrior Ridge Elementary, Jason Schroeder. And then from Daniel Boone Elementary, Lindy Miller. This is the actual plaque that will be up at the park in honor for the Arbor Day contest. And it has their names and the schools they're from. So can I get another round of applause for them? They did a really good job.
Have everyone in the front when you smile? Awesome. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Excellent. Thank you guys.
Good job, guys.
Congratulations.
Good job. Great job.
Excellent.
Great. Good job. Lindsay.
Yeah, just don't put yourself on. So it's not often we get to recognize some of our own at the city. Guy Jeevers, why don't you come on up forward? So, in my eyes, and I think the whole board's eyes, and I'm sure everybody at the city, Guy Jeevers did something that was extraordinary and I think should be recognized. I mean, it's here by a proclamation, whereas Guy Jeevers started working at the city of Warrenton on November 29th, 2010, and has been the Public Works Director for 8 years. And whereas on April 8th, 2019, while driving his city vehicle in the vicinity of Highway 47 and Walton Street, Guy Jeevers observed a young child running towards traffic, and whereas without hesitation, Guy Jeevers quickly stopped his vehicle and ran into oncoming traffic to rescue the young child and notified law enforcement, who then returned the child to his parents. And whereas because of Guy Jeevers' quick thinking and bravery in a life-threatening situation saved the life of a young boy that day, and now therefore be it resolved that I, Eric Schluter, Mayor and the Board of Aldermen for the City of Warrenton unanimously express our sincere appreciation as we honor and recognize Guy Jeever for his life-saving action, dated this 16th day of April 2019. And I do appreciate it. If you don't know, we joke around, but Guy Jeever is a very humble individual. I know he doesn't like getting up and receiving these types of things. But we joke a lot, but in all seriousness, we do appreciate it. Thank you. Next will be the public hearing for Chandler Estates, ZC 60.
Good evening. For tonight's public hearing, we have a zoning change request. On February 26, 2019, a request was filed by Chad Blondin with Blondin Construction for a zone change approval to allow R3 high-density residential to be located at 325 South Morgan Street, which is now zoned agricultural. During the discussion, it was asked by the adjacent property owners if they could change that to R2. The plan showed that the existing structure is just under the 30-foot setback requirement for R2. The surveyor verified it did not meet the minimum 30-foot front setback. There were no conditions from the Planning and Zoning Commission. The motion for approval passed 7-0 with 2 absent and 1 abstention due to a business conflict at the April 4, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. As far as staff comments, this is a 1.66 acre tract of land. The subdivision application, which is also on the agenda for this meeting, reflects the parcel being divided into 3 lots. The existing structures on the parcel was determined by the surveyors to meet the 20-foot front yard setback requirement for R3. In response to the adjoining property owner's request that the applicant consider R2 zoning rather than R3, it was determined by the staff that R2 is not a viable option since there would be no contiguous property with that zoning designation, and which would result in spot zoning. So for staff recommendations, R3 zoning meets the minimum requirements for the front setback for the existing structure located at 325 South Morgan Street. There's R3 zoning contiguous to this parcel. Staff recommends approval of the R3 zoning request for this property. I also ask that the City of Warrenton Municipal Code be made part of the record by reference. The comprehensive plan of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record, and the public hearing notices and the planning and zoning report be made part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you. The opportunity for anybody from the public to discuss the Chandler Estates ZC 60, please come forward to the podium, state your name, we'll give you 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Board Alderman. For the record, Bart Corman with the Lucent Beatty Surveyors and Engineers, here to represent Blondin Construction on the rezone. It was pretty much explained in the introduction there. Just asking from agricultural to R3 residential zoning. So here to answer any questions that may arise.
Good evening. I'm Dan Booza-Cruz. My wife Sheila's here today, and Brad and Susie Booza-Cruz, we both live at 321 and 319 South Morgan. So I sat behind my brother's house, and we've got just some questions. I've had the opportunity to visit with Neil, and did a great job helping me understand the zoning. A number of years ago, when we applied to build what is myself and Sheila's house now behind my brother, my dad had put into to divide it. The only option we had was R1, and I guess my question is R2 only dealing with setbacks, or is that the rather? It seems like we jumped from ag to R3 quickly, only based on setbacks. Yet if you look at the houses that are currently on South Morgan, most of those do not meet the 20-foot rule setback. And I guess my question is just further verification of the R2, if somebody could help me understand that.
I don't know that I totally understand your question, but if a house is built on a piece of property and a zoning comes in place, which a lot of those houses were built prior to the city's adoption of zoning in 1982.
Right.
Whatever way it's built, the zoning can't force the house to be moved backwards, okay? It's what's known as grandfathered or legal non-conforming to that zoning setback. When we really took a look at this, because there was a suggestion, well, why don't you go to R2? There's a restriction in creating what's known as spot zoning, which is these little islands of zoning less than 5 acres for a residential district, for R2. So really logically, the right rezone was to R3. I remember when your property came in for a subdivision, but I don't remember the details of why it was R1 or whatnot at that time. That'd have to be something we'd look into, but it has to be, it either has to be a big enough area to rezone to a new zone, or it has to be contiguous to an area, and this is contiguous to the R3, so it's really the only, zoning for that could apply.
And what's the intended use that's on that?
Well, I
that's
think the
being
applicant's
proposed?
here, the applicant's representative is here to ask that question. I know there's been some talk and concern about a conditional use, or I apologize, for multifamily or duplexes. That would require a conditional use permit and a totally complete and separate public hearing, zoning requirement, vote and recommendation by planning and zoning, and consideration of an ordinance by the Board of Aldermen. So that's not on the table as far as tonight. They could go and build 2 single-family houses and could just go get building permits. If they wanted to do something multifamily, even though it's R3, they would have to go back through the entire process again. And I will tell you, knowing Bart, if he intended to do that, he only likes to do it one time, so we probably would have saw the conditional use permit at this point in time, if that's what the intent was to build. But I think Bart can answer that better than me.
When you're done,
Okay.
come on, address that.
And I guess, looking at information that I received also, it talked about 70-foot lot size. From the current stake that adjoins our property going south, there's a pretty good gigantic creek. And from that peg to the center of the creek, the culvert that's there, which is pretty deep and pretty wide, it measures exactly 30 feet. So is there a plot survey, or is there a plot that we could pull up on the screen that shows the placement of both of those homes at this time, if that's possible?
Well, the preliminary subdivision plat will not show the house locations, it'll just show the 2 lots.
Is it taken into consideration in Barker Creek that's there? So will it be beyond the shed then, if it's currently there?
The house would sit probably about where the shed is.
Would accommodate the floodplain and so forth and so on. Okay. And I guess then, the other question then, that gets back to if it stays R3, and I guess we're hearing that it's gonna be a single family, single dwelling, that's what we're hearing. If that property is sold down the road, can that property then, if a person bought the property and wanted to do a duplex, multifamily, could they go back through and ask that they be allowed to do that then, under the current?
They could come back and ask for a conditional use permit to come back and go through, and just so it's clear, what a conditional use permit is it requires public notice in the paper, a public hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, a vote and recommendation, yea or nay from Planning and Zoning, and then consideration by the Board of Aldermen of an ordinance approving it. So yes, they could, but understand, any piece of land, despite what its zoning may be right now, somebody can always come in and ask for something. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to get that approval for it if it's not specifically appropriate for that location.
Right. Well, that was our concern was, because you get a little concerned when you see ag go immediately from ag to R3, and then, you don't have to go too far up the street to find some multifamily right as you turn to go down South Morgan. And certainly we've got, beautiful homes. There's a lot of pride and ownership along South Morgan. We're revamping the house there. We've been in the process of over a year now revamping, our facility to make it look, enhance the area as well. And I know Brad does a great job with his home too. So we got a little concerned. I personally was not able to meet the planning and zoning, to visit with them because we were out of town, but, that was kind of the red flag was, it jumped pretty quick, because I also am in real estate and auction with Thornhill Real Estate and auction out of Troy. And we don't normally see things foster so quickly to go from ag to R3. Sometimes we run in difficulties getting it changed to R1. So agriculture is very important, and I know South Morgan is very important. We got a great park next door and everything else, and we just didn't want to get into an issue where we had, multifamilies, duplexes, and everything else going up around us as we're trying to expand our property footprint and do what's right for the Warrenton community. So that was our question that we had on it. And then I guess, Bart, there can be no, the creek-wise, they're gonna have to stay back away from the creek, because that's, like I say, it's a pretty good-sized creek that goes through, and it dumps directly into Big Creek, which is behind our house, so we'll have to be very cognizant of where it's at. I know Frank Belker was there as I was growing up very young, and he had a towing service and a garage there, and we see every once in a while, we see 1928 doors down in the ditch, and I told my brother, I said, we need to do some digging down there, we could maybe put a car together for a car show somewhere, so we just wanted to make sure that that was taken care of. Now, my brother and I, we fully support single family, and it will enhance the area, and we look forward to having great neighbors. But again, our concern was when it moved very quickly from ag to R3, we began to think, holy cow, we're moving in a new direction with multifamily in Warrenton. So
I know if I could echo what Dan's concern was, I talked to Brad a little bit about it too. He stopped me the other day, and I know that was the concern because of the multifamily that is right there on the corner of Morgan and Walnut,
Right.
or Walton,
Right.
and I know that was concern, and I think Brad had talked to Bart too, and kind of eased his mind about it a little bit. So hopefully it'll ease your mind too. So.
I guess the other thing then is parking. I know we have events every once in a while, and I know that I think there's no parking on the east side, but as we pick up houses on the west side and we have people visiting, our situation, Brad and I have plenty of parking for reunions and things when we come down. But now during the Easter egg hunt, we had difficulty getting out because of the amount of cars that were actually parked on the east side. So as we begin to move forward with more construction in the area, I only have found one sign, and that's up at the top of South Morgan on the east. It's kind of faded, it says no parking. So I wonder if, just in the back of your mind when you're out traveling around, if you could kind of focus on that and see if there needs to be additional signs set up, because on the west side, we don't have any sign. There's one sign posted way up on Morgan Street. It's kind of faded out that says no parking, and they've been very good moving off, but every once in a while I get the park full, and especially when the pool was there, you had, people kind of migrate out, and it gets difficult to get out of the driveways. And now because we're putting more property, on the other side of the driveway, maybe that's something that also needs to be looked at and see if additional signs may help us out there. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So on this map you have drawn up, is it the lot that's directly to the, I guess right across the houses is where from the pool is where you live, but is it the lot directly to the north?
Yes, it's correct.
Could someone point out?
Could you point out with an arrow, or you got a point here?
That's Brad's.
That's
Yeah, that's fine.
Is this yours here?
Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
The lots in question, Bart, or which ones?
All right. here.
Right, yeah.
So it's on the south side, so we couldn't see it totally.
Yeah, the property in question is this area here.
So it's really listed as 1.62 acres on this, but it's 1.66.
Correct.
So, but I mean, going back to the question of drainage, that they would be subject to the same issue of you can't do a construction on a property that increases the drainage. It has to be the same. Is that true? That there was some concern about that issue.
So the creek or the ditch comes right through here, crosses the road there, and it comes through here. And we're supplying a 50-foot wide road and utility and storm drainage easement here. So nothing can be built on that 50-foot strip there. And so, that's what's there. Floodplain does not quite touch the property, so the issue of floodplain is not a concern. Obviously, you'd still want to hold it up high anyway, because floodplain maps do change over time. So, yeah. And then, if you got any more questions, otherwise I'll address the questions. So the intended use of this property is to do 3 lots. It's really 2 tracks now. We're reconfiguring it to 3. And for residential, single-family residential is what'll be there. Blana Construction, as you know, builds single-family homes in the Warrenton area, and that's what they intend to do here as well. If they did come back for conditional use for something such as multifamily, obviously there's concerns now. They would have to extremely address that for that to pass through the whole system. And to be honest with you, I would probably advise my client not to do it because of the hassle and the concerns now. So I will pass that on. They received that concern at the planning and zoning meeting, and it sounds like it's a concern here now. That's not their intent. They explained to that, and I would say probably within the next year you'll see houses on those tracks, and they will be single family. So.
If I remember right, in the notes that were given from planning and zoning, it also stated that it was single dwelling that they were seeking.
Right.
I think it's documented in
So is the intent to take the one house down and build 3 new, or just add 2 new on?
Add 2 new.
Okay.
Did I get all of your questions addressed? If not, I
Allowed
can.
to ask a question.
You can't, you have to
Come
go
on
up to the
up.
mic.
That's all right. I was just concerned about, he said it goes back through the process that's appropriate for that location.
It's the same process for multifamily. It's a conditional use permit. It's set out in our code. It requires actually 2 public hearings, one in front of planning and zoning, one in front of the board. Consideration in front of that recommending body, and then ultimately up to them to say yea or nay on an ordinance.
I just got concerned with the.
Yeah, no,
what
it's not
is appropriate for
location
that
specific.
location.
If Bart said that, Bart's wrong. Sorry, Bart.
That's okay. Thanks, Mark.
Any other questions? Did we answer all of? Okay,
Great
just making
job.
sure.
Thank you.
No problem. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll go ahead and bring the public hearing section to a close and move on with the regular Board of Alderman meeting for consent agenda items.
We have the regular meeting minutes from April 2nd, 2019, the executive session minutes from April 2nd, 2019, and work session minutes from April 2nd, 2019 for medical marijuana dispensaries.
Any of those? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted. So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Shell Harvey, seconded by Alderman Dyer. Roll call vote.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz is absent. Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Dyer,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller,
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with 1 absent. Next, we'll be hearing from the public. If there's anything you'd like to speak about, please come to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and your business. Not seeing anything, we'll move on to the Board of Alderman comments. I like it. Some days. Some days it's real nice to be all quiet. Just want to recap a couple things that happened this last week, maybe 2 weeks. The J.D. Sinclair, and the only reason I'm bringing that up is, if you don't know, J.D. was a former officer with us years back. His passing was tremendous in our community, but they did a benefit ride for him, and it seemed like it was well attended, even though the wind was a little cold for riding, but it seemed like they had a pretty good turnout. And the way I understand it, between the Fair Board fundraiser and the ride, they've been able to come up with some money for his widow, to be able to take care of the expenses after his passing, and it's just nice to see the community pull together. But also the Weiss Foundation, which Alderman Dyer did attend with, that I did see her there. I'm sorry if I didn't see any of the rest of you guys, but I noticed we got to chat for a little while there. It was well attended, and if you're not familiar with the Weiss Foundation, it's something that helps our schools here in the Warren County R3 School District. It's great. I won't go into the nitty gritty of it, but it actually just benefits the teachers. When they have an expenditure that can't be met, they go to them and petition, and it's like a grant system. They're able to provide some money for their classrooms that maybe wasn't provided for in the budget. It's a real good cause. But the real thing out of that was Jim Edmonds from the Cardinals was actually able to be there, and I'll tell you what, I don't want to get into any reference. He's a good-looking guy. Sitting there watching him, because like, after how many years and how old he is, that guy's he was a heck of a speaker. He really was. Motivated, just really talked about the foundation for Care to Learn. I wasn't aware of what Care to Learn was. It was all educational for me, and it was really neat to see that type of concern in our community for the young kids or anybody in that age. It's a neat foundation, so just encourage people to look into it. It was really neat to find out about it and be educated on it. With that, I'll go quiet with the rest of it. Next thing will be the appointment for Michael Cooper to alternate B to replace Kevin Gerloff, and appointment of Philip Priest as alternate C on the Board of Adjustment. I'll entertain a motion for this.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Deloy, seconded by Alderman Miller. Roll call vote.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Dyer?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. Next will be the certification of the election results. I'll entertain a motion to approve the certification of election results for Alderman on April 2nd, 2019 election.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Miller, seconded by Alderman Dyer. Roll call vote.
Alderman Dyer?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. And the oath of office for newly elected officials. Please all come down.
All right, if you want to stand there, if I stand there and raise your right hand, can you do that?
You gotta do it again.
No, you guys
I have to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Official.
Oh,
Double
official, okay.
All right, if you raise your right hand, repeat after me. When I get to the position, you'll say mayor and you'll say alderman. I do solemnly swear
I do
solemnly swear
that I possess all the qualifications
that I possess all the qualifications
for the position of mayor alderman
for the position of alderman
of the city of Warrenton
of the city of Warrenton
as prescribed by law,
as prescribed by law,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Missouri,
and of the state of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws
the provisions of all laws
of this state
of this state
affecting this city,
affecting this city,
and the code of ordinances
and the code of
of
ordinances
the city of Warrenton,
of the city of Warrenton,
and I will faithfully demean myself in office.
and I will faithfully demean myself in office.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. 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 If you guys can sign this. Okay. Very well.
Back immediately. So the next item I'd like to speak about first, Board of President is, for the Alderman is something that's, I think it's a pretty, it's a high seat to hold. But with that being said, I know Alderman Schultz had mentioned that today when I spoke to him. I'm gonna ask that we table that till the next meeting, till you can be here and actually be a part of that vote. I mean, I think it's fair for the full board to be here on that vote. I mean, if there's anybody that doesn't, let me know, but I think one meeting's not gonna hurt us to carry it forward too. And then we'll have the full board to be able to do that next month. I appreciate that. Next item will be the approval to close the streets for citywide cleanup on April 27, 2019, from 6:30 a.m. to noon.
This is just closing, the side street here, West Street, from Sallyport to Walton, and then the one lane of Walton Street from East Street to Walton. That's where the cars come down. They usually come down Walton Street, and they'll be directed to go around the pavilion to drop off their recyclables and then continue on through to exit.
Make a motion, we approve the closure of streets for the citywide cleanup on April 27th from
Second.
6:30 till noon.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Shell Harvey, seconded by Alderman Deloy. Roll call vote.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Dyer?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. Folks, if you haven't ever been to a citywide cleanup, I'm just gonna speak on it very briefly. Not only does it help beautify our city, but our city staff really do a good job. As much as we tease and laugh, they're out there and they're making it a good day. They smile, they're very helpful, they see people multiple times, but they all know that it's really helping beautify our city. So number one, before we even do it, I appreciate all the effort you guys have already put into it, not much less the one that you're going to put into it. Secondly, participate. It's a great opportunity. It's free. So you don't have to pay to have things hauled off. You just have to get a way to get it up here. So,
I could add something to that. I would urge the public to please check the list of things that are prohibited from bringing them up here, so you don't put our city employees on the spot. I know in the past, there's occasionally been some of that, so help them out. They do a great job with it, so that's all I wanted to add.
are we doing the shirt thing again? So what is it, the first what?
50.
The first 50 people, you get a t-shirt. It's a nifty t-shirt. I got a couple of them because I was one of the first 50. Next, we'll hear from City Administrator Terry Thorne.
I don't have anything for you this evening.
You're just about as short as the Board of Aldermen.
There you go.
Next, we'll hear from Director of Operations, Randy Walters.
Good evening. The only thing that I have is the renewal for insurance for this year. The healthcare insurance they've given us a price of a 5% increase, which we thought was really great. And it would stick with the same United Healthcare that we have currently. And then that would increase approximately an impact to the city $29,278.20 annually. And then we have the dental insurance renewal, which is at 4.96%, which is about $1,400 of an increase to the city annually. And then the life insurance, they have no change in premiums. They're going to keep those the same, and the vision as well will be no change in the benefits and no change in the premium. That being said, the difference for, say, a family in healthcare per paycheck is $12.46, and for dental, it would be a difference in a family coverage of $2.61.
Any questions of those? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation from the Director of Operations for health, dental, and life insurance renewal.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Miller. Roll call vote.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Dyer?
Yes.
Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Director of Planning and Development, Neil Fick.
You have a copy of my report.
actually last month I had a lot more people coming up, actually last week, just interested in property that's going on or that could possibly go on in the city of Warrenton. So I was surprised just last week alone. Do you have any questions for me?
It looks like there was a inquiry from the RCGA. Could you talk about that, or?
I've had a couple that ask just what's going on with the city and what options or what there is available as far as taxes and things like that. So I've had to pass some of that stuff along to another entity who could better answer some of those questions. But they're calling here first to ask what's going on. So some of those things I'm still not familiar with, but I'm making sure I'm going through the comprehensive plan, getting more familiar so I can answer everyone's questions as they're calling up.
They're pretty broad inquiries, they're not
Yes, sir.
specific.
Yes.
Any other questions, Colin?
All right, I will move along to the Warrenton Music Boosters Mud Run. So we had an application from Jennifer Bergmeyer for the Warrenton Music Boosters. She submitted the application on 3/24/19. It was SEP 44. She submitted the application. All the applications and drawings were submitted. Notification was sent out to the property owners, and the signs were posted. So they've had this multiple times in the past. So the recommendation from the staff was that we pass this. There's been no negative effects on safety and general welfare of the public. And Jennifer is here if you have any questions.
It supports a good cause. I don't, do you have any questions on this? I'll entertain a motion to approve the special event permit for the Warrenton Music Boosters Mud Run SEP 44.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Shell Harvey, seconded by Alderman Deloy. Roll call vote.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Dyer,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent.
Okay. All right, so next is Chandler Estates ZZ 60, the zoning change. I think I explained, I explained the conditions. There were no conditions. There was a motion, it was passed 7-0 with 2 absent and 1 abstention. And again, staff recommended that the R3 zoning meets the minimum requirements of the front setback of the existing structure located at 325 South Morgan. There is R3 zoning contiguous in this parcel, and staff did recommend approval of the R3 zoning request for this property.
Any questions on that? This will be a bill later on on the agenda.
Okay. All right, and finally, I have subdivision 70. So on 2/26/19, a request was filed for subdivision approval to allow 1.66 acre tract of land located at 325 South Morgan Street to be divided into 3 lots. Now, at this meeting, this is when there was a discussion on sidewalks, you know, if the builder was required to put sidewalks in. Well, at this time, they were not required to put sidewalks in. There is sidewalks on one side of the street. So there was also discussion regarding parking. At this time, the Planning and Zoning Commission couldn't do anything about the parking, but I would get with the Director of Public Works and verify that we did have the signs up there to show that there was no parking on where they were required. And there was also a concern of buried tanks and scrap on the property. So we talked with Bart and would also get with the building commissioner, make sure that there are no tanks and that the owners would know that they would have to contact DNR.
For
So-
removal of them.
Excuse me?
Contact DNR for removal of them.
Yes, removal of the tanks, yes. So there were no conditions. The motion passed 7-0 with 2 absent and 1 abstention. due to the business conflict on April 4th, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission. So, the staff comment, this is a 1.66 acre tract of land. The site plan shows 3 lots, and this will allow 2 additional structures to be built. Staff recommends consideration of the following conditions. There's already a sidewalk there on Morgan, so there's no reason to require a sidewalk. And if the builder was to pay into the sidewalk fund, it would be $7,052. And as far as, like I said, Public Works would verify that no parking signs would be in place. Building commissioner would contact DNR, and new subdivisions. New subdivisions are required to pay into a park fund. But per section 410-150, after doing the calculation, they did not meet the minimum requirement for paying into this fund. We did verify it because the subdivisions are coming up, so we want to make sure that we are making sure that we are continuously enforcing our ordinance that's in place.
Any questions?
What constitutes a subdivision?
It's a formula that is put in place. So it's based upon the number of units, the acres, and the number of people per unit. And then if that calculation comes out to 0, and then you would multiply whatever that figure by the amount per acre. But because that figure came up below the, came up to 0, so 0 times anything. And I put a copy up there so that way you would see have a copy of the formula. But the formula is just based upon the subdivision itself.
Thank you.
So, Alderman Dyer, the reason why I snickered a little bit is we had a workshop about 2 years ago. Those were a lot of questions. It was about a 4 or 5 hour workshop because we were going over some of the definitions and, you know, what met criteria and what this. And, you know, people that don't think planning and zoning have a hard job, it is extremely hard to keep up with everything and be educated on it. Hats off to those guys that are on that and gals that are on it. It's amazing. I thought I knew a little bit about it until we went to the workshop, and then I kind of, if I had hair, I'd rip it out, that's for sure. So that's the only reason I snickered, because I agree with you. It was like the multifamily definition on some other things. We finally combined a couple just because it didn't make sense. And so we are trying to streamline things and kind of redefine things. And it's a work in progress, it seems like.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Neil. Any questions? Is that all, Neil?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Public Works Director Guy Jeevers.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. First time I have my monthly report. On one thing of it is you can tell things are going on. We had 87 locates, so that usually is a sign of people are looking and getting locates called in to see what they got in the ground. We had a total of 6 sewer calls, 1 sewer main repair. They're out flushing water lines, dead end water lines. We did 73 of them. Replace some water shutoffs. So water shutoff comes from non-payment. You can't get them turned off, so then we gotta go dig them up and then turn them off and fix the ones that need to be repaired. So we had 3 of them last month. Any questions? Okay, so the next time I have is the recommendation to hire Pace Construction for the Roosevelt Stormwater Project. And their contract price came in at $210,500, which I was under on that amount, so I need to reallocate $53,600 from the crack fill machine. And that project is scheduled to start in May and should be about 120 days. We got to relocate some gas lines, we got to relocate some electric poles and a fire hydrant. So I'll get the book from the contractor, with everything signed, and we'll proceed with that project if you okay this.
So is this running from Flora south up to, how far up is it going?
Going from, let me just put me on the spot, Wabash, Flora.
So it's going from basically the road tracks all the way down to Flora?
It's going right where it starts as you go down farther, there's already curb and gutter there. It's taking care of that big ditch going down Roosevelt and cleaning that up. Not all of it, it's, catch basins. It took forever to get easements and temporary easements. This project drug out a little long, but it's just time consuming. Gas is supposed to get in and move their gas line fairly quick, and then proceed with that.
I'll have people ask you about how far it's gonna go to the south, so it's gonna go all the way to Wabash. So it's
Yeah,
really
going down where
a
the-
two full block
Yeah.
stretch.
So I need approval of that.
Are they all bidding the same specs, all these companies?
Some of, like, Pace, some of them are real high,
That's what I'm wondering, how can there be, just to pick,
and
you know,
I guess
Pace, their Pace to, for instance, Lamkey, there's $100,000 difference, but then you jump up to S&S Utility, and they're at what, 400 and something thousand going.
they didn't want, I guess they didn't want no part of it. I guess they shoot it high, because we had three that were in reason, you know, from
Yeah, that's
232 to 210. But what the engineer said that they miscalculated on their bid.
Who
on,
did?
S&S Utilities.
Oh, okay.
But the rest are all submitted out.
Right.
So, well, I just wonder, cause you know, too often we have, okay, they bid a job and then they're coming back for
More money. Yeah.
And you know, that's why I wanna, are they making sure they're all got the same specs and?
We have three that are close. So I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, no, it looks good.
And then the engineer did go through all the bid tabs and all that, and make sure everything was the same, the quantities and actual footage and that, so they do look at that.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to award the Roosevelt Stormwater Project to Pace Construction Company in the amount of $210,500, a low bid.
So moved.
Second. I was waiting for Hawk, cause I know that was his pet project, so we got. I wanted him to get.
I still want to get sidewalks in there. They were promised a long time ago when those houses first went in, so we still got a ways to go on the goal. But we'll get there.
Motion made by Alderman Ock, seconded by Alderman Shell Harvey. Roll call vote.
Alderman Shell Harvey?
Yes.
Alderman Dyer? Yes. Alderman Ock?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Guy.
No, thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Building Commissioner Mike Cross.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. You have my monthly building report.
Questions about the report?
Everything going smooth out at the senior residences out on North 47?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Looks like they're getting after it, so.
They are. The snow and the rain kind of slowed them down a little bit here, but other than that, they're going at it pretty hard.
Has anybody on the board been out towards the high school and the back entrance, I should say? Anybody noticed the new concrete apron? I know you're smiling. It's beautiful. It's huge though.
Yes.
They put a new concrete apron right by the water tower. So.
Yeah.
That's, when I pulled up there, I was a little amazed, to be honest. And I didn't expect it to be that big. It looks nice.
Yes, that's for the CBU mailboxes and parking for people to get their mail.
It looks good.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Next, we'll hear from the Chief of Police, Larry Eller.
Good evening, I just have one item for you, and that's the monthly report, if you have any questions.
Questions?
It's my only conclusion from this, if you have marijuana in your car, you probably should drive better. Bingo. I mean, it's amazing how many people get stopped and all of a sudden you find it, so. I would say that if you're gonna carry marijuana, it probably would be helpful to yield to cars and to have your headlights on and to have license plates not expired and all sorts of little things. It's amazing.
Words of wisdom, sir.
We're falling on deaf ears, all right? Not here.
Any other questions on the report? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next are bills and ordinance, so I'll entertain a motion for the first reading of bill number 15-19.
So move. Second.
Motion made by Alderman Miller, seconded by Alderman Deloy.
An ordinance authorizing the rezoning of approximately 1.66 acres located at 325 South Morgan Street from AG agricultural to R3 high-density residential and amending the zoning district map thereon.
I'll entertain a motion for the second reading and passage of bill number 15-19.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Deloy, seconded by Alderman Dyer.
An ordinance authorizing the rezoning of approximately 1.66 acres located at 325 South Morgan Street from AG agricultural to R3 high-density residential and amending the zoning district map thereon.
Roll call vote.
Alderman Dyer.
Yes.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Deloy.
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey.
Yes.
Bill passes 5-0 with one absent. Now, entertain a motion for the first reading, bill number 16-19.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderman Miller, seconded by Alderman Dyer.
An ordinance accepting the plat of the subdivision known as Chandler Estates by the city of Warrenton, Missouri.
Entertain a motion for the second reading and passage of bill number 16-19.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Alderman Dyer, seconded by Alderman Deloy.
An ordinance accepting the plat of the subdivision known as Chandler Estates by the city of Warrenton, Missouri.
Roll call vote.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Deloy.
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey.
Yes.
Alderman Dyer.
Yes.
Bill passes 5-0 with one absent. I will entertain a motion to close the regular Board of Alderman meeting and go into executive session for legal counsel and real estate.
So moved.
Motion made by Alderman Deloy, seconded by Alderman Shell Harvey. Roll call vote.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Alderman Deloy.
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey.
Yes.
Alderman Dyer.
Yes.
Alderman Ock.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. We are so adjourned. Thank you for